Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our FAFSA 101 night. My name is Yavuz Kiramit. I am the Director of Undergraduate Admission here at Lasell. You won't be hearing too much from me tonight. I'm actually just here to moderate and keep an eye on our chat and our Q&A. Jen is our presenter for the evening. And before we get started, I just wanted to talk about how this is going to work. So Jen has prepared some slides to talk about how to file a FAFSA. And we are going to be taking questions throughout the presentation. So if you do have any questions, the chat box and the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to ask a question at any point. If there's something relevant on the particular slide that we're on, shoot us a question. We'll stop and answer that question. If you have more just general questions at the end of the presentation, that is fine as well. I believe this presentation is roughly about 40-45 minutes, and we do have some time at the end where we'll answer any questions that do come in. And before I do hand it off to Jen, there are a couple of links that Jen has prepared for the FAFSA, and I'm going to put those into the chat box right now as she is getting started. And those are links that I think you'll find very useful as well. So with that, I'm going to mute myself, drop those in the chat, and Jen, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Yavuz. So welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Jennifer Muldowney. I am the Director of the Financial Planning Department at Lasell University. I want to welcome you all here to this event, and I hope that you find this useful. Basically, what we're going to be doing, as Yavuz said, is walking you through almost slide by slide to be able to help and assist you make sure that you are completing the FAFSA application accurately and correctly. Again, as Yavuz said, please feel free to ask any questions during the presentation. The FAFSA is unique to each family, and some questions may be applicable to some, while other families, it may not be applicable to you at all. So let's get started. So let's look at the documents that you will need to gather in order to complete your FAFSA application. You'll see here a comprehensive list of required information. So students are going to need to know their social security number, parents' social security numbers, driver's license for the student. If the student is not a US citizen, we will need an alien registration number that needs to be entered into the FAFSA application, federal tax information, W-2s. The IRS 1040 form is going to be your best tool when completing your FAFSA application. And making sure that you have records of any untaxed income, such as child support, interest, VA, educational benefits for both the student and for the parent. The FAFSA also does ask questions in regards to how much you have in cash and checking and savings accounts, along with your investments in a business if you do have a business as well. So when logging into the FAFSA home screen, this is what you will be looking at. And some of the tools that Yavuz has provided to you, you can find on this website. So the website is studentaid.gov, or you can get to there by FAFSA.gov. Both will take you to the exact same places. This is an excellent resource tool for students and families to take advantage of it. It provides all sorts of tools and links to navigate through the financial aid process, including helping you complete the FAFSA application, all the different types of aid. There are certain links that are down here, down the bottom, when you're working through the process, if you're looking to obtain loans after your FAFSA has been completed. All of that information will be listed here. The other portion that I want to talk to is the resources that Yavuz put into the chat are great tools. This is basically a FAFSA paper application. So this enables students, if you can't follow along with me right now, if you're not on your computer or your tablet and just watching the presentation, you can use those tools as guidance to be able to mock up everything before you actually go into the electronic application and submit it. The other thing that I want to mention is that the FAFSA actually has an app that can be downloaded for either an iPhone or an Android. These are obviously a great resource tool because our phones are always in our hands, and we can then complete the FAFSA application there and any other student loan borrowing if the student and or parent decides to borrow from that portion. So now let me show you how to get started and log into the FAFSA. If you have not yet already logged into the FAFSA, you would select this button right here, New to the FAFSA application process. If you have already started your application process and are looking to make a correction, or you've attended another university and are looking to potentially maybe add our school code onto it, you would then select this option right here with the returning user and log in this way. Below here will give you all the FSA announcements talking about obviously your family financial situation. We understand that many families have been impacted due to COVID. And so the FAFSA for the 2021-2022 does require your 2019 tax information. If for whatever reason that you feel that that information does not accurately portray your current financial situation, there are ways that our office can do change in circumstances or professional judgments to help offset and to portray the more realistic situation that you are currently in. If you have further questions about how to do that, we need your FAFSA completed, again, with your 2019 information. Once we have that information, then you can outreach to our office to appeal from that information. So the FSA ID is required to sign the FAFSA for both the student and the parent. And this is one of the links that Yavuz had put into the chat. If you have already created the FSA ID, great, you can definitely do that. If not, you can use the link to be able to do and create that. If you are doing it from the FAFSA application, you would want to select right here where it says create one, and then it will bring you right to that same site that's listed in the chat to create that FSA ID. If you, again, have already created it, you can just put in your information here, and then you'll be able to log right in, click the next button, and it will bring you to the two different FAFSAs that are available. Again, because the FAFSA award year goes from July 1 to June 30th, it can be very confusing that there are two FAFSA applications listed here. All students that are attending a school in the fall 21 semester needs to complete the 21-22 FAFSA. So please just keep that in mind. The other thing that I want to touch base upon with the FSA ID is that the FSA ID, if you are not creating the FSA ID during this stage right here and you are following it via the link, it does take 3 to 5 days for Social Security Administration to validate your identity. So you would need to create the FSA ID, wait those 3 to 5 business days, and then go ahead and complete your FAFSA application. The important part is the save key. So this would be the next portion when you're logging into the FAFSA after you have already signed in using your FSA ID. This allows both students and parents to share access. A lot of parents don't want their students to see their financial information or vice versa. So this enables families to create a save key, have the student complete their section, save that save key and send it to the parent. Then they can log in using their FSA ID and update their information and electronically sign the process. So then there is no way that the student and or parent can see the other's information if that's what you so choose to do. The one good thing is the FAFSA key can be anything. It can be numbers, it can be digits, and it does save the FAFSA application for 45 days. The other good thing is if you can't complete your full application in one sitting, you obviously want to save it. You'll need the save key to go back in and then to finalize your application at that point. As you can see here, the FAFSA is comprised of 8 different segments that are made up to complete the whole application process. So each segment is comprised starting with the student demographics. Then we move into the school selection process. Then we determine if the student's dependency status, if they're an independent student or a dependent student. We then need to provide parental financials along with student financials. Then we sign and submit it, and then we get the confirmation page. Then we successfully have completed our FAFSA, which is great. I'll be walking you through some of the common errors that families make through this process. The next couple of slides, though, are just pure student demographics that students must need to complete. So I just want you to bring attention to one page here when I talked about the save key. Make sure you're saving often. You'll see that this green box will illustrate when all of your information has been successfully saved. So these are still components in the student demographic section. So the important part is students' residency to determine their eligibility if you are eligible for any type of state grant. So you want to make sure that you're answering this information correctly. If you've lived in your state for more than 5 years, you'd want to answer yes, if not no, because that will determine if you're a Massachusetts resident, if you'll qualify for, say, the Massachusetts state grant. The other thing is, to be eligible for financial aid, you need to be a US citizen or a permanent resident. If you are neither of these, then you are ineligible for Title IV. So this could be another reason as to why you may be ineligible. Another common mistake that we see in our office comes along the grade levels of when students are completing. So a lot of students select that they're a fourth-year senior because obviously you're a senior in high school and that's what you think that you're supposed to put in there, but this is actually going upon your college level. So for most first-year students, they've never attended and you want to select never attended first year. Second question listed here is about federal work study. So to be completely honest, the answer to this question does not matter. Our office is going to determine to see if you're eligible for federal work study regardless of the answer to this question. If you are eligible for federal work study, it will be included into your financial aid package, and the student will have the choice to, apply for a job on campus and to then use those wages that they receive on a bi-weekly basis to help for any educational expenses. So again, some other reasons that could potentially make a student ineligible for financial aid. So male citizens and male immigrants between the ages of 18 and 25 must register with Selective Service to receive federal aid. The requirement applies to the person of the sex that they were assigned at birth. So if a student decides that they do not want to register for Selective Service and were born as a male, they would be ineligible for Title IV aid. So that's why this question is very critical. If you are not yet registered with Selective Service, you would want to say no and then have the FAFSA register you. This process will save your registration until 30 days prior to your 18th birthday and then process it for you. There are various other ways where a student can complete their own Selective Service registration, either via the Selective Service website. You can complete it right on that website, but you can't do it unless you're within 30-day time frame. The other thing that students must attest here is that they have a high school diploma or a GED. Be Title IV aid eligible. So you want to make sure that you're putting in your high school and searching it and validating it so you can be eligible for Title IV. So now we're moving on to the second tab, which is the school selection. Students are allowed to add on up to 10 schools onto your FAFSA. If you know the school code, you're going to want to select this yes button right here. As you can see, our school code is listed on the website. It's 002158. If you select yes, drop-down option will populate and you can just type in that code right there. Because this answer is no, you can then enter in the state and the city and hit search and then find the school from that prompt instead. In the next slide, you'll need to confirm school in which you've selected. You'll also be prompted to select your housing plans, either if you want to be on campus, with parent, or off campus. And then by adding these school codes onto your FAFSA, those listed universities will receive those results if you successfully complete it and sign it within 3 to 5 business days. So now that we finished the school section part, and we've listed our school code onto our FAFSA, let's move into the dependency status questions. This is to determine if you're required by the Department of Education to provide parental information on your FAFSA. As you see here, the Department of Education has a set criteria to determine if a student is a dependent student or an independent student. As you will see from the series of questions here, what happens is every time a question is answered, if the answer is no, questions will just continuously appear until they finish. If one of the questions are answered during this dependency status question, the student is then considered an independent student. In most of these cases, those are unique circumstances, and our office will most likely need supporting documentation to justify one of those unique circumstances. If all of your questions are no, you'll be able to see on the next slide what you'll be able to progress and move forward to. Another misstep I'm seeing a lot this year is still on the student section of the demographic page is marital status. A lot of students are putting their parents' marital status in this section. So just remember that this first tab here is all for student section. As illustrated in the previous slide, all the questions, if they're answered with a no, and these are some of the remaining questions, if they're all answered no, will then populate this slide here. And it will ask the family and student that you will provide parental information or I am unable to provide parental information. This last option here, if you're unable to provide parental information, is really a unique situation where the parent is unwilling to provide their tax information when the student is actually still a dependent student. This really prohibits the student because they end up forfeiting their aid eligibility. And the student can only then borrow an unsubsidized loan based upon their grade level. So I strongly encourage families to try to avoid that option and to work together to try to get your tax information correctly and accurately portrayed and entered into your FAFSA application. Now, once we've finished the students' demographics, we're going to go on to the parents' demographics section. So parents are going to need answer the same questions about marital status. And this is critical. The marital status is as of the date that you are actually completing the FAFSA application. If your parents are divorced, it is the parent who supports the student more than 50% throughout the course of the award year. If parents are divorced and parents are remarried, so we have a biological parent and we have a step parent, and they are now covering more than 50% of that student's financial support, then both the biological and the step parent's information needs to go on the FAFSA. So that's a little misconception there too. A lot of families just put one parent if they're divorced, but if you're remarried and it's not a biological parent, that step parent's information still needs to be involved there. And it provides parents the option to put parent 1 and parent 2. And you'll see that on the next slide as well. So there is some logic and edit checks that is built into the FAFSA application. So in the instance before, there were 2 parents. So you can see here that it says 2 parents and 1 in college. So it does the math for you to try to make sure that the information is being entered accurately and correctly. So we need to clarify who makes up the household size. So household size are, for a dependent student, anybody that the parents are supporting more than 50% throughout the year. I've seen siblings and grandparents, incorporated in the household size. If your siblings are over 24 and are considered an independent student, they are not part of your dependent student's household size. Grandparents, if they're receiving Social Security, you're not providing more than 50% of their income, so they should not be reported in your household size. Vice versa, if you are supporting more than 50% and they're not getting any benefits, then you can include them in your household size. So it's all really with that threshold of how much are you allocating your resources for your family members. If it's more than 50%, they can be included as long as they are not considered an independent student on their own. Now we're going to move into the parent financial section. So the parent financial section, and I can't stress this enough about the ease of using the IRS data retrieval tool. The IRS data retrieval tool is a simple tool. You put in your information here. If you file single, head of household, married filing joint, you should have no issues completing and being able to use this tool. You just have to click this link here. It will take you to the external IRS website. It will automatically import all of your tax information directly into your FAFSA application for you with just a click of a button. Again, the people who cannot do this are people who are married filing separately, or people who are married that have filed head of household, or anybody with a Puerto Rican or a foreign tax return. The data retrieval tool does not work for them. Again, this is the easiest way to provide your tax information, and it eliminates, if you are selected for a process known called verification, it eliminates the requirement to send a copy of your taxes to our office, because we know that this information is accurate and valid. If the parent is either ineligible or decides not to use the IRS data retrieval tool, they will be required to enter their financial information manually on each of the next 8 slides. The questions are based upon your 1040 federal tax return, and that information, again, that Yavuz put in there lists out each one of the line items where you need to be looking. So for instance, here it tells you to look at line, 1040 line 1 plus your schedule 1, and everything may not be applicable to you and your own tax unique situation. So you want to read through each one of these and see which one it is to be able to get the most accurate information. You can also hover above these question marks as well, and it will give you further guidance and information on what to look for and to gather this information. There are also other areas that we need to focus on for the parent information, focusing on income, untaxed income, assets, and additional information as well. Again, there are also logic based in upon people's income. If students are, going to be receiving one of these benefits, then they may be eligible to bypass a lot of the other additional questions. So there are skip tracing logic that is also built into the FAFSA application. So don't be afraid that if you're seeing one of these slides and you're going through the FAFSA application that it wasn't presented to you. Like I said, each unique case is different. And so the process will show you and present you what the next steps needs to be. I'll give you some examples of what questions have been asked about the tax filers and some asset information. And I want to just spend a little bit of time going over the asset information. So again, you can see here for the tax filers, it lists out what should be reported if you have served in the military, and thank you for your service, any combat pay or anything that you've received. College grants, tax credits. You look at all the lines that are listed here and then plug in the information again if you're not able to use the IRS data retrieval tool. Asset information is never going to be reported from the IRS data retrieval tool. These are self-attesting numbers and figures that you need to be putting in. So the first one is the amount that you have in cash, checking, and savings. Again, this is as of the date that you are actually submitting the FAFSA application. Investments. The investments I want to touch base upon. Investments do not include the home that you live in. They don't include the value of life insurance, retirement plans, 401ks, pension plans, annuities, non-educational IRAs. Again, you report your cash, checking, and savings in the line item above. We want to just make sure that you're taking your actual investments and their current balance minus their debt and putting in the value into those fields. The last one here is business and farm income. So the business value does not include the value of small businesses if it's family owned and controls more than 50% of the business. The business has to have more than 100 employees for it to actually be reported on the FAFSA application. These are just some critical keys that some people, put their house, the value of their house in here, and those are things that you don't want to do because that is going to drive up your expected family contribution. Moving on to the student section. So the student section now is going to be exactly identical as the parent tax section that we just had looked at. Most students may or may not have filed their taxes. If they did, they can use the same link, use the IRS data retrieval tool, link to the IRS, and input their tax information directly into their FAFSA application. If for whatever reason they did not if they did not file taxes, then they can just put their earned income from work based upon their W-2s. And you can see here, they still have to answer the same asset questions that parents have to with the same rules and regulations. And again, the other untaxed income items. So this would be like money received and paid on your behalf. So if, parents are help subsidizing, bills, things like that, or grandparent is giving funds, you can put those in on money on behalf received for the student in this section right here.
Jen, there's a quick question that came through.
Sure.
The question is, what if a family makes a mistake during this part and submits it? What happens then? Is there a way to fix it after the fact?
I do that. I'm going to cover how to make corrections after we submit this application. I'll show you how to make corrections after the page. Definitely.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Of course. So we're almost coming to the end of submitting it. So we're almost there. So right here is the next slide that will come up with the preparer. So the preparer, in most cases, you're going to answer no. If you, the student or the family, are doing the FAFSA application, then you're not a preparer. That is if you're using an external agency to complete your FAFSA on your behalf. Once you hit the next button here, you'll then be provided with a whole summary of your entire FAFSA application, all of the 8 different subsections that you will review, make sure all the information is accurate, and then you will be presented with the next slides to be able to sign the FAFSA application. So again, both the student and one of the parents, if there are parent 1 and parent 2 being reported on the FAFSA, one of the parents needs to sign it and the student. So this process has to be done twice. So right here, the student would select process the signature, say that I'm agreeing, I'm certifying all my statement, it's all true, it's accurate. Make sure you read all of this information because of course, it is perjury under law if any of the information is inaccurate that you're signing and submitting. Then goes on to signature, it's processed, and then it says, great, congratulations, this one's been successfully signed by the student. And then we move on to the same section for the parent. So one of the parent needs to provide the signature. And again, this is where the FAFSA becomes smart enough. So if for whatever reason there is only one parent is going to be provided here. If both parent one and parent 2 are presented, either one of those parents can sign the FAFSA here by presenting those 2 options. And then again, reading the terms and rules and regulations, attesting to the attestation and agreeing and signing the application. So then you will see that the parent has signed the FAFSA. There are 3 ways. So if for whatever reason you had created your FSA ID and your FAFSA is not allowing you to sign it currently at this stage because it's still in that 3 to 5 day window, you want to just save your FAFSA application at this stage and then go back and then sign it electronically. These other 2 ways of printing a signature page should only be for students where parents are non-US citizens and do not have a social security number, because that process can take up to 5 to 7 weeks for that to be validated and to be processed. So we always want to be signing everything with the FSA ID whenever possible for those families that can do so. So then you will see great success when you have both signatures. You will hit the Submit Now button onto the FAFSA application, and you will get these two wonderful screens. So you should get them popped up, and you will get them also emailed to you. You'll be brought to the confirmation page. So on this page, it will say, congratulations, it's been successfully completed. You'll get a DRN number. This is just a processing number that you want to keep on your records and retain. Then also on this side, you're going to be receiving your expected family contribution. That is where colleges and universities will determine how your financial aid package is completed and awarded to you. The other thing we'll list here too, all the universities that you had listed on your FAFSA application. And a great tool here, if you're trying to complete multiple children's FAFSAs, you can select this button right in here, and it will auto transfer the parent's information into your next son or daughter's FAFSA application. The one caveat is if you do close out of this period, this screen right here, you would have to then go report all of the parental information again on your other son and daughter's FAFSA. So once you close out of this, it's lost forever. But on the positive side, you completed your application and it's submitted. Now let's talk about those FAFSA corrections and how do we resolve those mistakes that potentially could have been made. So logging back into the FAFSA, you'll be presented into the home screen, which is the My FAFSA screen. And so you can have a variety of issues and errors depending on what your unique circumstance is. You may have something that say action required, which means it's missing a signature. And so that's when basically you paused, you didn't wait the 3 days to get your FSA ID validated, and now you need to go back and you can just click this make correction right here. The other portion is if it's not submitted and you just save the application, you have two choices. You can continue with the application from where you left off, or if you feel that you have messed up the entire application and just want to start fresh, you can completely just hit the start over button and go from there. So here, I know this is a very small, but again, under My FAFSA, there is a Make Corrections tab right here. It's in the middle portion of this. Once your FAFSA, again, remember there's 2 award years. Make sure you're looking at the 21-22 award year. You need to have your FAFSA say process successfully. Every time that you make an adjustment to your FAFSA, it takes that 3 to 5 business days to process, and you can't make any edits during that time period. So you have to wait until you see this screen, and then you can log back in and then click on that Make FAFSA Corrections button. And when you're in your FAFSA, it will look a little bit different from the previous one that we were just looking at. So you will have the same tabs up above. I would then recommend finding, if you're just trying to add a school code, I would just go right to the school selection, select that, and then add the school code onto it. If you're trying to go to the financial information and use the IRS data retrieval tool, you can just select that and go on to that section and make any of those updates and edits from that point. So those are basically your ways to navigate, and they give you the sidebars as well instead of the little question marks in this version when you're making corrections of the tools and helpful hints if you have any questions or concerns during this process. And again, the most important thing is whenever you're making any correction to your FAFSA that you need to actually submit it again and process it. So you have to go through the same process of making sure that it's signed by both the student and the parent. It will all depend on the change that's being made. If the change is being made to just adding a school code, only the student is going to need to re-sign the FAFSA application. But if any component of the parent's demographics or the parent's financial information has changed, then they will need to also sign or re-sign the FAFSA application. So this is just showing you that page. You agree, You sign, and then the parent would do the same thing, agree, sign, and then you would submit your FAFSA now. And then golden, you would get a confirmation page again at the end of the FAFSA, and you will also get it emailed to you as well with your updated EFC if you made a change to any of your financial information or household size or anything like that. And again, it will list out all of the universities that you've applied to and give you a little bit of information. And again, this process takes 3 to 5 days upon either completing the FAFSA or corrections for any financial aid office to receive any information of the updates. So I want to thank you all for attending this FAFSA 101 with Lasell, and hope this information provided some guidance for you to be able to complete the application on your own or make those corrections as you may need to. If you have any further questions, I'm here to answer any of them, and my contact or our contact information for our office is listed here. Please feel free to call, email us. We can do one-on-one Zoom appointments with you. Anything that will be able to help and assist you get that FAFSA actually submitted. We want to make sure that you're not losing out on any available funding that could be potentially out there from state, federal, institutional, or any other agencies that are available to you.
Awesome. So Jen, when you first started the presentation, I was actually looking through our list of attendees and just looking up in our system. And it actually looks like we have a mix of families here. There are some families from for this year, for the fall of 2021, but I noticed there's actually a few people from fall of 2022 that are getting a jump start on the process. So as far as like dates, deadlines, timeline, or some advice that you could give to both someone who's going to be attending school this fall and for folks that are going to be looking at attending school in 2022, what would you share as far as dates and deadlines and timeline?
Great question. Awesome. So that's, you guys getting a jump start. That's absolutely great. Obviously what ends up happening is the tax information is being done on a prior year, so you really don't have to worry about that because you would be using your 2020 tax information if you were going to be applying for acceptance to the university in fall of 22. So that you wouldn't have to worry so much about. The FAFSA does become available on October 1st. So again, because you don't have to wait for your taxes to be done, we strongly encourage families to get that application done on, as soon or as close to October 1 as possible. Our office starts sending out financial aid award letters in the month of December. So, you want to be one of those first families to be able to get that packet and share. And basically, if you are a Massachusetts state resident, the Massachusetts deadline is May 1st. If you are not from Massachusetts, on that first page on the website, on the FAFSA, there is a drop-down option for all of the different states, and it will provide you what your actual state's deadline is. So those would be kind of my key target dates is October 1st, get your FAFSA completed by, and if you are attending school, this fall of 21, make sure you get your FAFSA done by May 1st. The sooner the better. You don't want to leave any dollars on the table anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you are a family who's looking at joining us in the fall, you do still have a little bit more time, so you're not too late or anything like that. But again, there isn't a ton of time. And the other thing to keep note of too is that in terms of colleges and like deposit deadlines, the universal deadline that most schools follow is May 1st on making admissions deposits. A lot of schools are flexible. We're pretty flexible with it. And I think you're going to see a lot of schools that are flexible with it this year. The one thing I'll add there, though, is that if you do need more time beyond May 1, you do start potentially running into conflicts with things like summer orientation and with choosing your courses or choosing housing if you're going to be a resident student. All of those things kind of happen first come, first serve. And so if you are going to be attending in the fall of 2021, if you have not yet made a decision for college, or if you haven't filed your FAFSA yet, I would encourage you to do the FAFSA as soon as you can, get that information in hand. And if it is possible to make your college decision and get your deposit in by May 1, that would put you right on track to get everything done over the summer. Again, if you need more time we're pretty flexible about it. I think Lasell has always been pretty good about that. But just know that the longer you wait into the summer, the more possible roadblocks you run into or little snags that you might run into with course registration, housing registration, all that sort of stuff. Looks like there is another question that just came through. So let's take a look at that. Is there specific aid for students coming from Catholic schools? Are there separate forms for that?
So we do not have a specific scholarship for based upon high school. What happens is the admissions department looks at your application as a holistic review. They will determine your Lasell award based upon all of the documentations that you submit to their office. And then based upon your FAFSA results, our office would then take into consideration your FAFSA results to determine any need-based aid, but we do not have any specific scholarships based upon religious beliefs where you went to high school or any of that currently.
Yeah, Lasell is we have no religious affiliation at the school, and so no specific scholarships that way. That is a great question, though. If you are looking at schools, if you're looking at a variety of colleges, that's a good question to ask them. I used to work for a Catholic school, and while the school that we worked for didn't have like any sort of blanket scholarship for Catholic schools, there were a couple of like really specific scholarships that had been donated to the college that were looking at certain criteria or looking for students from certain specific high schools and things like that. So it's always a good question to ask schools that you're looking at. But for Lasell specifically, as Jen said, yeah, when I do application review on the admission side, that wouldn't be one thing that we look at. So, yeah. And so with that and the other question that had come through earlier, I actually don't see any other questions right now. So I think we're good. And if anyone does have any more questions, Jen's contact information has been up on the screen, the 617-243-2227 number, or just finaid@lasell.edu. Jen and her team are fantastic and really answer questions really quickly. And so if anything does come up, let them know. Otherwise, I hope you found this informative. I think for the for the families that are looking for the fall of 2021, again, don't panic. It's not too late, but it's something that I would encourage you to get started on soon. For the families that are looking for the fall of 2022, it's awesome. You guys are really early, and that's a great thing. But there's really not too much to do from now until October. So you might forget a lot of this by October. We were actually just talking about how we might redo this presentation once October rolls around. So, so when this does become a little bit more relevant to you, we'll definitely be doing this again. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a wonderful night and have a great weekend coming up. So,
Yes, yep,
see you
thank
guys.
you. I
All right.
appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.